Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to today's episode of Locked On Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. My name is Nick Bondi. I'm joined as always by my brilliant co-host Lachlan Irvin, live from the bowels of the British Columbia Institute of Technology. Lachlan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. You're doxing me right at the beginning of this very clearly live show.
Yeah, I was channeling my inner Don Taylor there.
Yeah. That's always, you can't get enough Don Taylor. There's no such thing as too much Don Taylor. If that's something we've learned, I think in 2021 is absolutely that.
Yeah, absolute legend in this town. But Lachlan, lots to get into on this show. We had our first, I think we decided to call it the Cascadia conflict on last episode, the rivalry between Vancouver and Seattle. So lots to get into in that game. We'll, of course, lead off the show with that. We'll talk about Elias Pettersson and his struggles to start the season. Serious problem or just what they are, early struggles. And we'll end the show with a bit of Pacific Division check-in, see how the other teams in the Pacific Division that the Vancouver Canucks are battling with for a spot in the playoffs are doing so far. 5 or 6 games into the season. They've all played a different amount of games so far, but let's get into it, Lachlan. Saturday night, Vancouver versus Seattle, the first game in what promises to be a long rivalry with the Seattle Kraken at the Climate Pledge Arena in downtown Seattle, right by the Space Needle. That's where the arena is. If people are curious, right, pretty close to the Space Needle. I remember walking by it a couple years ago, going to a Seahawks game. But I digress. Canucks versus Kraken. I think very obviously Thatcher Demko, first, second, third star, 4th star as well, if that's even the thing you want to give him. He was amazing in that game. And we talked about it on a previous episode, how the Canucks kind of got goalied in that last Saturday game against Detroit. Well, they did that to Seattle. I mean, Demko was making 5-star saves, especially through the second and third period. He was the reason the Canucks were in that game and had a chance to win it. Connor Garland. Again, a previous episode, we said this guy is rapidly becoming a fan favorite here in Vancouver. I think he cemented himself as a fan favorite here in Vancouver with the game-winning goal in the very first home game against Seattle. Great move, too. Fake slap shot right through the 5-hole of Philip Grubauer. The rivalry, I think, is officially on. It was a great atmosphere at that game, Lachlan. Right? It was the barn was rocking. The arena looks kind of cool. I have to admit, I'm not a fan of the 2 giant screens. I think that's kind of whack for an arena. But you know what? Again, our last episode, I said the mood of this team will completely change if they manage to get 4 points against Chicago and then Seattle, and they did exactly that, right? Like, we can put away the pitchforks at least for a bit until the next time we're able to panic, because they got 4 points. It's a completely different mood heading into the home opener now tomorrow night against Minnesota Wild, since they got that win against Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it like in the last show about how I think the Seattle game is going to be like one of the biggest games of the season, even this early in. Like, this is a big game. Like, this matters not just in the terms of the season, but in terms of like setting a tone for literally the rest of your history, of your NHL history, more or less. And, you know, like, I don't know if you saw during the broadcast at one point, during Hockey Night's broadcast, they pulled up like a graphic showing like the history of Vancouver and Seattle sports of like playing against one another. The first line had the Vancouver Grizzlies and the Seattle Supersonics, at which point it said Seattle won 20 of 24 against them.
Yeah, both dead.
Both gone. RIP. The Grizzlies never deserved to leave. If you can take one thing out of today's show, it's that the Grizzlies got completely screwed.
And Seattle did too.
And Seattle did too. Seattle did too.
Probably even more so.
Yeah, probably even more so. I would agree with that. And then they showed the Whitecaps and the Sounders, which the Sounders have dominated that rivalry in the MLS.
Yeah, it's hardly been a rivalry.
Yeah, it's hardly.
Let's be honest.
It has hardly been a rivalry. Vancouver has really struggled to win any games in Seattle. And I forget exactly who the third graphic was for, but it was another one where it was like Seattle's like, it was probably like the Vancouver Giants and the Seattle Thunderbirds, and the Thunderbirds have obviously been around a lot longer. But so yeah, like Seattle has generally dominated the Vancouver in the few sports rivalries that they've had. Like they've very clearly had the upper hand, so it's never really felt true. So for the Canucks to come in and win the first game, to win that first game against Seattle this time around, it was like, yes, this is don't you get it? This is our sport, damn it. Like this is the game that we've been playing for 50 years. Like you got some catching up to do. Yeah, Thatcher Demko absolutely stood on his head. Clearly, like the whole look, we can talk about the points all we want. Like again, I always say that, you know, it's not about how you win or lose. It's not about winning or lose. Like the points matter, of course, but like it definitely matters about how they're winning and how they're losing games in the long run, and how you can improve on that. And let's be honest, they weren't the better team in that game for most stretches of the night. They had a good first period. The first period, the Canucks definitely looked good. The most concerning thing for me going forward is the fact that I have not seen them play a full 60-minute game yet. Because Seattle, after that point, there was the Vince Dunn goal with about 3 seconds left, set the entire crowd off, like loud building, by the way.
Yeah,
very loud
it was a hell of a pop when Vince Dunn scored that goal.
Yeah, that's cool. That was cool. Like in terms of like seeing like hockey, like the growth of hockey, like that's always a cool moment. But yeah, after that point on, the Kraken were more or less dominating possession. They were controlling the play. The Canucks just got opportunistic. Like they took advantage of the few chances that they were getting. And yeah, like Bo Horvat had a pretty good game as well. Like he was making things, like he put the team on his shoulders at points during that game. And then ended up with 2 goals on the night. Even like Mark Giordano took the 2-1 lead like midway or early in the third period. The Canucks again were not playing particularly well by that point, and yet they still got key contributions from that second line. That second line completely saved them in that game as well. Like in terms of from a scoring standpoint, Horvat, yeah. Garland, and Pearson, they looked very good. They're looking very good as a unit. And yeah, Thatcher Demko completely stood on his head, had easily his best game of the year. It was very much his night. Like that was one of those games, like especially where like, you know, for a new franchise like the Kraken 50 years down the road, people are going to be talking about how, oh, do you remember that first game? Oh, only Thatcher Demko wasn't in net. Like that's a game where legends are made. Like that's a game where like he becomes like that big, that larger than life figure in Seattle sports kind of thing, in like Seattle sports lore. So it was cool to see him put up that night, that kind of a game. And then Connor Garland, yeah, with that key goal at the very end. And then the whole little bit, I don't know if you saw, there was the highlight of him staring down.
Yeah, some Kraken fan was chirping Connor Garland. He gave him a death stare. Yeah, see, it's a goal. It's the stuff like that. That's why he's already a fan favorite here in Vancouver.
Yeah, exactly. ESPN caught that, which was very funny. Like again, like just another case of having more good broadcasting makes everybody better, because then you get they caught the camera vision. They caught the clip of the shot of him staring down the fan behind the glass, and it's fantastic.
It's such a good shot, man.
Yeah, shout out to Emily Kaplan for noticing that from between the benches, because that was awesome. It was, yeah, overall the game was fun to watch. It was entertaining. Like you said, I think the arena looks really cool. Like I will say that I am all for the double scoreboard thing. As somebody, because like look, when the scoreboard hangs in the center, like it makes sense for sure. But there's a huge section of the building that's sitting on the opposite ends of the building. So they're so far away from the screens. Like it's close for the people.
That's why you make the screen big so they can see it.
But most of the time they only make the screens, like whenever you see like the really, really big jumbotrons, you ever notice like the screen is huge on the the lengthwise side, and then it's short on the ends. Like it's short on the two ends.
Well, yeah,
sides.
those
So, like,
side seats are the cheap seats.
but that's still, it's like you're getting screwed. Like if you're sitting in the cheap seats and that's all you can afford,
But now you're paying
getting
for the
screwed.
expensive seats at the Climate Pledge Arena, and now you're getting screwed.
Well, no, because you get two full.
But they're on the
screens to
opposite.
look
You're
at.
sitting in the middle. They're on the opposite sides of
But
the
they're
building.
tilted in. But they're tilted inwards. So if you're sitting in the middle,
I don't like
like
it.
you
I don't
still
like
get
it.
a good. You still get
You're
a
making
good
good
shot of
point.
it.
You're not going to convince me that the two screen system is a good idea.
Fair enough. I like them. I think it's cool. I think the arena itself, they did such a good job with that building.
It looks cool.
Yeah,
Besides the two screen thing, it looks cool.
yeah. They've
And
done
it's
a really.
underground. People, I think, like they mentioned on the broadcast, like the roof is at like street level. The actual building's like built underground.
Yeah. Did you ever go to the old Key Arena? Did you ever go?
I might have. I think I might have gone to actually a Sonics game, or I think I remember going to something there when I was a kid with my dad. I don't remember what.
So yeah, it's very different now. Like to the point where there was one really the shot I really liked.
Well, it's a totally new arena essentially, except for the roof, which was, I guess, like a heritage thing or something like that, so they couldn't touch it.
Yeah, and that's honestly fine because that roof looks awesome. Because that roof's really cool. But like one of the cool things I liked is they actually somebody from the press box took a picture of, so now there's like a glass feature on the opposite ends that used to be, only see into like the concourse area beforehand. Now it sees actually into the ice, like into the ice surface, and you could see literally a row, like the whole row of like Kraken fans watching the game from behind that glass outside.
Oh, I'm sure the owner loves that. A bunch of people paying, not paying to watch the game. I'm sure he loves that.
Who cares? They can't. That's awesome. Like I was thinking like, oh, like for like an all.
That'll be gone within 2 years. That'll be gone within 2 years.
I'm sure they will find some way to like make money off of that. Like they might gate it off and be like, you have to pay a ticket to come in and see that, to sit there or something. But like I was just thinking like, God, that'll be cool if like during like say like a playoff game or like a cup final game or something in Seattle. That's gonna be a cool spot to like see it, to like see that, witness that. So like I thought overall, I think they did a very good job with the building. I think the Kraken look awesome. Like as like a whole like franchise unit, looks really, really cool. But I'm very happy the Canucks won the first game. Like they needed that. They absolutely needed to win that game in my opinion, not just for this season, just in the general aspect of playing of starting a Vancouver-Seattle rivalry. They needed to win the first one. That's what matters, and they did it. They're the first team to win at Climate Pledge.
Yeah, they're always going to have the bragging rights like we won the first game. You can never take that away from the Vancouver Canucks. And it's a very similar situation to what we talked about in our recap against Chicago, right? Yes, they got the win. They got the good points. That's good. But there's still areas of concern. They didn't play, like you mentioned, they didn't play a full 60-minute effort that got them the 2 points. It was spurts that got them the 2 points. I would say if there's one thing to take away of concern from these past two games and that game in Seattle is, like you said, they did not play a full 60 minutes. They got the win, but I mean, well, let's put it this way. It's reason for concern that they didn't, play a full 60 minutes, but it's also a cause for optimism. Like, hey, we didn't play a full 60 minutes. We still won. Imagine if we're a consistently good team for a full game, how more comfortably we'd be winning these games against the likes of Chicago and Seattle, right? I mean, two sides to the coin, I think.
Yeah, it's very much a double-edged sword where it's like on one hand, if you're winning games while not necessarily giving your full best effort, that's pretty darn good. That's great. But at the same time, the worry becomes, well, what if this becomes your ceiling? Like, what if this becomes your ceiling of putting in a full 100% work is only this, and this is all you can do? That's where the real worry comes in, is like, this might be their best effort might be this, and we don't know it yet. So, but again, I think you and I both believe that I think they're a better team than they let on to be right now thus far. I would say the closest I've seen to a full 100% effort from them was in game 1 against Edmonton. Like that was the first night that I was like, that was the one game where I was like, oh, they really looked like they were playing better, and they were playing a lot better, and they deserved a better fate than they ended up with. The rest of the games.
See, I would say the same thing for the game against Detroit as well. I know you disagree, but that's a game they should have gotten at least 1 point out of. They had chances to tie that game. Many chances.
They had chances to tie. They had chances to tie it for sure, but I also think there were long stretches where they were not good enough. Like that first period against Detroit, where the first period against Detroit, the Red Wings were the better team. Like they were clearly outchancing them. They were controlling the play. The Canucks got better as the game went on, but like that first period was rough. The first period was rough in that game. I think that eventually they're gonna pull it a full 60 minutes. I think it's most likely gonna come pretty soon here, especially when you have the home crowd. You have the home crowd behind you over the next 7 games, I think. Pretty long home stretch, I think, for them. So I think we're gonna get to know exactly what this team is like over the this homestand, and then we can kind of guesstimate from there what's gonna happen and how confident we're feeling in the group.
Yeah, and I think this Vancouver-Seattle, the Canucks Kraken rivalry is going to get a lot more fun when we can freely, go up and down from the border, right? Like obviously, right, you could have gone to the Kraken game. It just would have been tough because it's essentially tack on an extra $200 because you need a negative test before you come back up, right? So yeah, I think the rivalry is going to get a lot more fun for both sets of fans once you can freely go up and down the border. And Canucks fans can go down to Seattle, Kraken fans can come up to Rogers Arena. The rivalry will be a lot more fun when there's a lot more free movement across the border. One player who against the Seattle Kraken maybe didn't have the best game was Elias Pettersson. We're going to get to that in just a moment, but first, a word from our sponsor, DirecTV. Today, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle. DirecTV Stream brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, which means you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So stop waiting and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Okay, Lachlan. Elias Pettersson. It has not been the best. Well, against Seattle, he wasn't at his best, and I would continue that against Chicago and Buffalo as well. It has not been the best stretch of games for Elias Pettersson, and I want to address this in 2 ways. Yes, Elias, for some people, I think online, it's sacrilegious to criticize Elias Pettersson for some reason, and you're a bad fan for criticizing Elias Pettersson, and that's not true. Both things can be true, Lachlan, in my opinion. Yes, he's Elias Pettersson, and he's going to figure it out. We've seen enough of him over the past, 3 seasons, now into his 4th season with the Vancouver Canucks, that he will figure this out. But also at the same time, he hasn't been that good to start the season. I think especially at 5-on-5, especially is where I notice it is, him and his line mates, especially the Lotto line, against Chicago and against Seattle as well. There was multiple shifts where they were hemmed in their defensive zone and they weren't pushing the play in the offensive zone themselves. So I think both things can be true with Elias Pettersson's situation. Yes, he is going to figure it out at some point. I don't have any doubt about that. But also, he's struggled to start the season. It's okay to say Elias Pettersson has struggled to start the season. You just have to qualify that by saying he's going to probably figure it out. I think it's a bit overboard when some fans online saying, oh, look at that. He's making $7.5 million a year and he's overpaid and he's lazy. It's not that. It's not that. Yeah. He's just struggling right now, but also it's okay to criticize Elias Pettersson. You're not a bad fan for pointing it out because in my opinion, it's pretty obvious right now. And he's going to figure it out. But at the same time, he has been struggling, especially at 5-on-5.
Yeah, no player is below criticism. It's just the matter of, tempering it and not making it seem so personal and not going for the personal aspect where some people have been.
It's not because really he's wearing too much Balenciaga. It's not because he's, doing TikToks or whatever.
That stuff drives me crazier than anything
just the
else.
Old man yelling at cloud takes.
Serious, and it's also one of those things where it's definitely for some people, for sure that it's if he were Canadian, they wouldn't say a word about that stuff. It's just because he's not Canadian. There's definitely that aspect in there for some people. But yeah, like that's not like he has definitely struggled to start the year. Like he's had a tough start. I would say in the Seattle game, like I was noticing a couple mistakes that he was making and a couple plays he was making that were very uncharacteristic. My biggest worry, honestly, is that he might still be like injured, as like because there were a couple cases where it looked like I'm like specifically like the way that he was handling the puck. It's like that doesn't look like the kind of like the smooth like silky hands that we're used to seeing from Elias Pettersson. So my biggest worry is that wrist of his, as the wrist is like not healed up. I don't know that. Obviously, I don't know that for fact or anything. So don't quote me on that.
Well, that's something that shows the type of player Elias Pettersson is, and the expectations are, because Elias Pettersson has reached a mold where if he's struggling, you have to assume he's injured, right? Like that's what you do for very good players. If a player's struggling, oh, is he injured? Is he injured? Is there an injury you don't know about? And like that, that's honestly the way you said, oh, he must be injured. That's a compliment.
Yeah, that's the case with, of course. That's the case with great players can play through a lot of things. They can play through a lot of stuff, but not everything. Like it's not like they're not superhuman. They're not indestructible. Yeah. That's kind of the thing with greatness in the sense is like eventually your body just can't hold that weight to a certain degree. Like Pavel Bure was a great example of a guy who probably could have done a lot more in his career had his legs been able to kind of keep up, and they hadn't worn down so badly over the course of his career, right? And really shortened his career span. And like Pettersson, obviously we're not talking about that necessarily. God, like knock on wood or anything like that.
Knock on wood.
Ever in our lives, but you do have to chalk up the idea that like Pettersson is. You expect more from Petey after what we've seen him capable of doing. I think that he has definitely struggled. I think he's definitely having a harder time to start the year than he has in past seasons. But definitely the idea that he has been absolute trash and the worst player, like absolutely doing nothing is overblown. That's completely overblown. He's still getting his opportunities. He's still, I believe, relatively hitting like one of the guy's highest in shot totals on the team. Like he's still leading the team in that front. He's just not having the puck go in necessarily as much. And I would say as far as like the current day, I'm a little concerned just in the terms of like health wise and everything, and if whether or not that's playing a factor. But as far as the long-term successes, every player goes through cold streaks. Every player goes through tough stretches. Even the best, whether you're Connor McDavid, whether you're Sidney Crosby, whether you're
Lachlan, what's the old saying? Every goal scorer is streaky. I think you could say the same about players like Elias Pettersson. Like these guys go through streaks, and I fully expect them very soon, or in the near future to rip it up.
Yeah,
but it's okay that he struggled so far this season.
Yeah, just don't chalk it up to like a lack of effort, because that's not the case with him. It's not a lack of effort thing. It's just he's having a tougher start to the year than he'd like, and I'm sure that will end pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think I don't think it's a serious problem. I think it's just early struggles at the very least, and maybe getting back home to Rogers Arena, getting in his own bed is the cure for all this, right? Like the Canucks are gonna start a 7-game homestand starting Tuesday night against the Minnesota Wild. Maybe some home cooking does them well. Maybe just playing in the friendly confines of Rogers Arena gets them going to start this season, because going down the stretch of this season, they're going to need Elias Pettersson to be Elias Pettersson if they want to make the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's any worry in my mind that provided he's healthy, he won't figure it out. Like that's going to be Elias Pettersson being one of your best scorers, one of your go-getters is a guarantee every single year. I'm not worried in the slightest that it's going to affect him for the rest of the year, that this is going to be like, this is his year. Like this, I very much am of the mindset that it's going to get better as he goes, and he's going to get a lot better as he goes.
Yeah, and it comes at a point where Quinn Hughes was playing really well. Like Quinn Hughes has come out of the shortened training camp for him. They both kind of had both shortened training camps, but Quinn Hughes has been playing pretty well, I would say, to start season, especially that game against Chicago. That was rookie year Quinn Hughes in Chicago. He was holding pucks in, wheeling and dealing at the blue line. He was awesome. but it hasn't worked out the same for Elias Pettersson. That would be maybe one area of concern is Quinn Hughes is doing well. Elias Pettersson isn't. So there might be something there. But again, it's still early. He's going to turn around, right?
Yeah, he's going to. I have no doubt. No doubt in my mind. Full stop. He's going to figure it out.
Absolutely. And Elias Pettersson has struggled. There's been a few teams in the Pacific Division who have struggled. We're going to wrap up this show with a little bit of a Pacific Division check-in. How are the teams around the Vancouver Canucks in the division doing to start the season? But first, a quick word from our friends at Built Bar. Do you know how Built Bar has so many delicious flavors? There's something truly for everyone. When you talk to a Built Bar fan, they're definitely passionate about their faves. If you don't know the Built Bar flavors, well, you're missing out. They have great flavors like coconut, cherry barcia, mint brownie. I'm a classic flavor guy. I like the strawberry, the orange, the cookies and cream. And if you haven't tried all the flavors, you get a mixed box where you'll get 2 of each of the 9 flavors. Not only are Built Bar flavors the best tasting, but guess what? They're healthy for you too. They have 17 to 18 grams of protein, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar, and calories ranging from 130 to 180. Order today and get the grasshopper cookie or raspberry or whatever you like. Go to built.com and use a promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 50% off built.com. So Lachlan, we're at an early stage in the season, but still nice to check out how the other teams in the Pacific Division are doing surrounding the Vancouver Canucks. Everyone's played at least 4 games, Calgary being the team that has played 4 games. Looking at the standings right now for Pacific Division, San Jose Sharks off to a really good start, 4-1. They got 8 points to the Canucks, 7 with a game in hand, so they've gone off to a great start. I don't think people were saying a Sharks were a tanking team or anything like that. They're not in the Arizona Buffalo category, but I don't think many people thought they would be a playoff team to start the season. Again, it's still very early, but the Sharks are off to a really good start. The Golden Knights obviously have a few injuries. No Max Pacioretty, no Mark Stone, no Alex Tuck as well. But they're 1-4. They're struggling to start the season. Not a good start for Vegas. The Oilers are 5-0, undefeated, 24 goals for, 13 goals against. They've had a tremendous start to the start of the season. And that power play is shaping up to be, just an all-time power play, in my opinion. Like the amount of options and the way they just snap it around on the power play, you don't want to take penalties against the Edmonton Oilers because it's like almost 40%. No. I would say like it's a coin flip whether you're gonna get a goal conceded or not. Calgary in 4th. They're a team where if you told me they would get off to a great start and would be top of the division early, I would have said, yeah, I can see it. Or they could have like flamed out at the beginning and be where Vegas is. I would have been like, yeah, sure. Like I didn't think anything was in the realm of possibility for a team like the Calgary Flames, but they got 2 games ahead on the Canucks with just 2 points behind. So maybe a team to watch out for going forward. The Kraken, obviously, not a good start to their inaugural season, 1-4-1, but still plenty of time for them. Yeah. And the Kings and the Ducks, kind of where we thought they were. Maybe not as bad, maybe not bottom of the division like we thought early on, but not a playoff team, at least currently. So Lachlan, a few surprises in the Pacific Division. We said it. I think we talked about the Pacific Division in one of our preview shows for this Canucks season. That's one of the reasons they can make the playoffs. Is the Pacific Division is just such a crapshoot out of teams like the Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights. But even a team like Vegas is struggling early. So there is an opportunity here for the Vancouver Canucks to take advantage of the chaos.
Oh, 100%. Especially with in the case of the Golden Knights, I think you and I are probably in agreement on this. I know a lot of people were in agreement on this, that Vegas before the season, Vegas had first place sewn up. Everybody was like, oh, this is theirs. There's no one who can touch them. Edmonton can't do it. Seattle won't do it. Calgary, Vancouver, no one's going to do it.
And again, we want to clarify, it's still early for Vegas. They've been hit by injury bug pretty hard. No Mark Stone, no Max Pacioretty. That's 2/3 of the opening line. So
yeah, and that's the kicker, right? Is they've lost right now. They're
mhm.
without, and not just without
The
Pacioretty,
points in
Stone,
October
and
count the same as the points in April, Lachlan. Like these points still matter.
but once you dig yourself into that hole, it's hard to dig
Exactly.
yourself out. So, and they're also missing like Alec Martinez is out, Zach Whitecloud is out, Nolan Patrick is injured. Like they're missing so many guys right now, so many key guys, and right now that means the Pacific. Because of that, the Pacific's ripe for the taking. Someone is going to step up. Obviously, that's Edmonton right now, and that's probably going to be the Oilers, to the Oilers' advantage more than anybody else's. But this is also the Canucks' chance to like build their lead. You gotta pad the lead, because eventually, you're right, Vegas is going to get healthy again. Most likely, Vegas is going to get healthy again, and they're going to start to climb back up. So the best thing you can do right now, if you're the Canucks, is win as many games as you can now. Build that cushion. Build that cushion between you and Vegas as far as you possibly can. So that way, when they do start playing back up to the level you expect from the Vegas Golden Knights, you've got the space and you've got the room to make an error or two. That's your best opportunity right now, is to build it. And again, put them in the hole. Put them as far in the hole as you possibly can, so that it's impossible for them to dig themselves fully out.
Yeah, and I think this 7-game homestand for the Vancouver Canucks is the perfect opportunity, to do that. They got 7 games
points.
at home.
14 points up for grabs in 7 games. That's a lot of points that you can move. That's a lot of points you can put yourself between you and the teams at the bottom, right?
Yeah, and just look at the schedule for the Vancouver Canucks. Obviously, the Minnesota Wild tomorrow night, the home opener. I like Minnesota. They're, I think, top of the second in the Central Division. The Blues are first in the Central Division.
They had a tough outing against Nashville yesterday. They had a bit of a tough night. So they're coming in.
Yeah, but Minnesota was my dark horse team to start the season. I really like Minnesota, so that's not going to be an easy game for the most part. But you look at some of these other games. They've got the Rangers, who are been okay to start the season, but still a team I think the Canucks could win against. They got a big game against Oilers, rematch against the Flyers. Like there's points there for the Vancouver Canucks, and the 7-game homestand is a perfect opportunity to pad these points. Like you said, pad the points.
Yep. Build the cushion, get that lead as far as you possibly can on the teams at the bottom. That is such a key thing. Like, don't in a way, like you're correct in the sense of like, yeah, April points count for the same as October points. Like they all count the same. Which is why it's so important to take those wins early as seriously as you can. Don't look at them as throwaways. Don't look at them as just like we got time, we can figure this out, because very quickly you'll run it, because it always sneaks up on you how quickly you run out of runway. So you never want to leave it to chance. Like even now, like the Canucks are 2 games away from being basically 10% of the way through their schedule. Like 8 games is 10% of your year, more or less.
Big math guy here.
Yeah, with obviously like the 2 extra games throwing it a little bit under that 10, but it's like, it's close enough. And yeah, that's a lot and that's very quickly that those chunks of games add up over time, and you're a month out from the season ending, and you may be in 5th, or you're maybe in you're just out of the playoffs and you're wondering what happened. So you got to make your moves early, and try and put yourself in the right mindset that every game is a playoff game.
And for this 7-game homestand, what's interesting is only 2 of these games are in the Pacific Division, right? You got the game against Oilers, and you got the last game of the homestand against the Anaheim Ducks. So 5 teams outside of your division. I think I talked about this on a previous episode. Maybe the game against the Flyers, like it's okay if you lose, gift another team outside your division a point by going to overtime or something like that. Not ideal when you're playing a team in your division against like the Edmonton Oilers or the Anaheim Ducks. Those games you got to win in regulation, in my opinion.
I'm gonna say just based on how the first homestand went, or the first road trip went, no giving up points to anybody. It doesn't matter if they're in the East. Don't give up any points.
I'd rather not, but I'd rather have. But look, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, and I'd rather have it happen against Eastern Conference teams or teams like in a Central Division. You're not essentially battling for a playoff directly.
Sure, but if you're the Canucks, you should treat every game like you're playing.
Look, I'm not saying that they should be throwing. You suggesting I'm saying they should be throwing games?
Teams have that mentality. You see it all the time where they're like, "Oh, it's a game against the East. It doesn't matter if we like feather the time for the next 10 minutes of the third period and just let it go to OT." Like that's not that's a team, an NHL team mentality. They always do that. And I want to see the Canucks not do that. I want to see the Canucks, if they're in a tight game, tied at 2 tied at 2 with 10 minutes to go in the third, push for the third, push for that last goal. Get it? Don't finish it in regulation. You be aggressive. I want to see them be aggressive and play like it,
Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to see where this specific division is after the 70-game homestand for the Vancouver Canucks, because Sharks have gone off to a good start. Am I expecting them to be, a playoff team by the end of the season? Probably not. Are the Vegas Golden Knights going to figure this out? Can the Edmonton Oilers keep up this torrential hot start to start this? I guess torrential is more rain than hot, but you know what I mean? Like, are they able to be like 10-0 or something like that? I doubt it, but they've gone off to a great start. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, especially by the end of the 7-game homestand, where the Pacific Division is, because obviously by then we'll have a bunch more games from all these teams. We'll have a better idea of who the Canucks are going to be battling for one of those playoff spots, and maybe a wild card spot as well.
Yep, 100%. You're going to be fighting with a lot of teams for some weird positioning. Best to try and make yourself the dominant force while you can.
Yeah, bank the points now while you can in October and November, and it'll serve you well come crunch time in April. But that has it for today, for today's episode of Locked On Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. Now make sure your second listen of the day is Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Host Scott Cullen leans on his decades of fantasy hockey insight and experience every day to help you be the expert of your fantasy league. It's free and available on all platforms. My name is Nick Bondi. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick Bondi. You can follow Lachlan at Lock in the Crease. And Lachlan, where can people find your writing?
You can find my writing on CanucksArmy.com. I've already I posted a few articles on there over the weekend, including talking about the Canucks' first 5 observations from the Canucks' first 5 games of the season, and a little bit of pregame stuff for Seattle. But you'll be seeing a lot more of stuff like that from me down the line.
Yeah, that 5 observations article is great. I did actually just read it before we started recording here. So good stuff, Lachlan. Make sure everyone reads that. And once again, this is Locked On Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for listening.